Good morning, everyone. I'm Ben Coleman, your host for Plane Time today, coming to you live and in the clear. Florida Aviation Network, and we are a project of the National Aviation Safety Foundation, and we have a myriad of information and volunteers here to help us bring this on. And if it wasn't for our affiliates and our sponsorship and our assistance for this volunteer operation, we wouldn't be able to do this. And we're bringing to you a show today on Plane Time 24 that is like no other, talking about the General Aviation Joint Steering Committee. And in welcoming our affiliates, and if you're watching this, we're streaming live on YouTube because we had a little minor server crash from our service provider. So we're taking another path to get this information to you. But we do want to welcome here December 21st, Bill Stuhl and Joel Wiener in Jacksonville, and Terry Kurtz, South Lakeland, Glenn Sims in Lakeland, Civil Air Patrol, Paul Adrian and John Weber in Leesburg with EAA Chapter 534, Barbara Walters Phillips in Orlando with EAA Chapter 74, Bob Jex, a very close friend to me and very close to me as we speak, and you'll learn what I'm talking about later, but you got to watch the show. And Randy Burke in Orlando with the it's the Central Florida Orlando Fast Team. And Randy, welcome to this new position. We've got a lot of work for you, young man. Vicki Sherman in Ormond Beach, Keith Phillips, Spruce Creek, Joe Schmalz in Titusville, Brenna Wright, and she is affiliated with the Wright brothers. Anybody heard of the Wright brothers? Did they do something in aviation? Bill McClung in Tampa. Bill, good to have you with us, and I know you're watching, and Bambi, Barbara's beautiful wife. Mike Miner in Tampa, and Dennis Hayes in Fort Myers, and Billy Hadaway. Billy, you still owe me that beer, buddy. And he's in Birmingham with Birmingham FSDO. Sam Gross in Tampa with Fast Team. Hey, Sam. Barry Simmons in Inverness with EAA Chapter 1674. Tom Deedman in Live Oak with number 797 with EAA. John Liccardi and Mike Ketchpaw in Fort Pierce. Thanks, guys, for your help. Rob Williams in South Carolina Triple Tree Aerodrome. If you haven't been to Triple Tree, bucket list. And Lori Spoler in Orlando. And Lori, her other better half, no, I can't say that way, is here, and he's doing the photographs with it. Actually, he is her worst half. I better quit right there while I'm ahead. Okay, Jim Waymeyer and Cress Wise in the Villages Aviation Club, and Willis Reese in St. Petersburg with Civil Air Patrol. Can't thank you folks enough for all that you do for us and for the industry. This is an industry program, industry show, and we're here for everyone that has an interest in aviation and aviation safety. And we're going to be, I've used the term aviation along with aerospace. Things are really, really big, a lot happening. So thanks again for our affiliates and for our viewers. We'll see you soon on Plane Time 24. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ben Coleman, your host for Plain Time, number 24, coming to you live and in the clear from our beautiful set here at the Gizmo Productions USA in Oviedo, Florida, which is a suburb of Orlando, Florida. Orlando's getting much larger, so we are expanding with it. And we're here as a project of the National Aviation Safety Foundation, and we are a volunteer organization. And the folks here in our set are all volunteers. No one is being paid today for what we're doing to bring this to you. And we do have a special guest here on our December version of Plain Time, but I tell you, Bob Jex has been around for quite a while. And there's no way to explain how he has assisted and helped more airmen during his tenure with the FAA. He's now retired, but he's still very active, probably just as active, if not more, now that he's got the time to dedicate to volunteering. But Bob is here to share with us some information that we can't really bring any other way because this is live and in the clear. It's personal and it's to you. We're streaming live on YouTube due to a server issue with our website. So bear with us on that. But streaming live on YouTube, and hopefully you're there with us, even up in the cold country. John Spencer in Pennsylvania. It's getting chilly up there, but hey, it's wintertime. That's what happens in the wintertime. It gets cold. It's kind of chilly here, but Bob, welcome to Plain Time.
Thank you, Ben. All the best, and it's just an honor to be back on the set.
You know, and you are very close to me.
We're close friends in more ways than one.
You're very close to me right now. Bob, we have a Wings AMT credit that is offered during these productions. And at the end of this production, there will be a 4-letter code that you need to have in order to get credit for this session. If you're an AMT or aeronautical maintenance technician, aircraft maintenance technician, it's okay to watch operational shows. If you're a pilot, it's okay to watch AMT or aircraft maintenance technician shows. You might learn something, and that's the whole point of us here doing this. Bob, what do you have today that you'd like to discuss with us? And I'm going to be I'm just going to be the sweeper in the curling game. You know what a sweeper does?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, I'm just there to keep us on target, but you are the guest. You have the knowledge. You have the information, the background to give it.
And I'm really delighted to bring it to the audience today. It's a wonderful program that we'll be talking about. But I did want to say, before we get things rolling, Ben, that this AMT and Wings credit is designed to help you get a little closer to your goal of either renewing your flight review or renewing your A&P credentials as you're required to do from time to time. The regulations are changing all the time, but that hasn't changed. You still need to keep that flight review current. If you're an A&P mechanic or an IA, you need to keep that certification and those privileges current as well. Programs like this are providing a wonderful public service to help people advance their objectives towards those goals. So it's an honor to be here and to help bring out the FAA's message to the aviation community. What I wanted to talk about today was a great project that perpetuates from year to year. It's called the General Aviation Joint Safety Committee National Performance Plan Topics of the Month and the Airworthiness Topics of the Quarter. We'll be talking about those and the full catalog for fiscal year 2025. One thing I expect the audience to be familiar with is when you're dealing with the federal government, you're dealing with terms that might not necessarily be familiar. And one of those terms is, what is a fiscal year? A fiscal year for the federal government starts in October, on October 1st. That's New Year's Day for the federal government, and it runs through September 30th of the next year. So we are in the middle of fiscal 25, and we are getting ready to put a bow on the first quarter of fiscal 25. when New Year's Eve rolls around. That'll be the end of the first quarter. Another term that you should know about is the GAJSC. You'll hear me talk about it. You hear the FAST team, program managers, and the volunteers talk about the GAJSC. What is the GAJSC? I'll have a little bit more later on in the program, but for now, what you should know is that it stands for General Aviation Joint Safety Committee. They are a body of industry and FAA subject matter experts, and they help guide the safety planning for and accident prevention outreach efforts for the year. You should also know what the National Performance Plan is. That's another term that we're using today. The National Performance Plan is a schedule of work for the FAST team and the FAST team program managers and the volunteers who work within the FAST team. It basically governs one fiscal year's worth of activity. So those are some important terms to know that we work with all the time at the FAA and within the FAST team. And even here at the Florida Aviation Network, we talk about it quite a bit. And we're accomplishing some of those goals just being here on set today.
And Bob, I want to interject that it is so good to have slides rather than just talking heads. You don't have to listen to the whole program and just watch our heads and listen to us. We can actually back it up with something that, over 75% of our learning is visual.
I'll bet in the case of pilots, it might even be higher.
Okay. But we're going to give you something to look at as well as something to listen to. Take it away, something about a monthly topic.
Sure. Within that National Performance Plan, or NPP, which contains about 50 different projects for the FAST team program managers to accomplish throughout the year, within that huge list of about 50 projects, there are two of tremendous prominence that affect us, what we're doing here today, and what the volunteers who support the FAST team are doing throughout the year. The first of those is a numbered project called NPP 14. That is the GAJSC's monthly topics of aviation safety, mostly aimed at the general aviation pilot community. So there's 12 of those, and we'll get into some details very, very soon. In a later section of our interview today, we'll talk about the airworthiness adjunct to that. So without much further ado, we'll talk about these projects of the month. One thing that is really great about the projects of the month, the National FAST Team Safety Topics of the Month, is that they contain pre-made media. If you're a FAST team program manager or a planner or presenter, and you're asking yourself, what do I plan for my group for the month coming up? We've got a catalog of media that's already in the can that you can use and present to your audiences, and you can get wings credit for having presented that. We ask for the volunteers themselves or subject matter experts to present them. They're wonderful topics. Each one is interesting. It fits in within the theme that the GAJSC has determined, and they're presented on a pace of one topic per month, typically. They are usually no cost to attend. Ben, how much did our audience have to pay to attend today's presentation?
It was pretty costly.
Yeah, I know. Exactly nothing.
No, it was
exactly
their time.
Nothing.
It's
Yeah.
not free. I mean, you have to dedicate your time to it, but there is no charge.
No charge, and we like to keep it that way. We can advertise to a broader group of audience members and bring them the safety message that the FAA wants them to have, without any additional cost to them. Let's talk about some of these topics of the month. We've been talking about the general category, but what are some of the specific topics of the month? It's a really great lineup, and as I say, there's wonderful fillers for an entire presentation for an audience, or they can often be done as a prelude to another topic. So our first topic of the month for fiscal 25 is vestibular illusions.
Excuse me? Is it easy for you to
That's a
say?
mouthful. The vestibular means the organs that are inside the middle ear that sense balance and equilibrium. They can easily be messed up and upset by the dynamics of an aircraft in motion. An aircraft that is turning or accelerating, climbing or descending, those inputs on the airframe become inputs on the pilot's body and can create wonderfully complex illusions that occur within inside the brain and can upset the sense of balance. Vestibular illusions are well known. They have been well documented as causes of incidents and accidents. And because of that, the General Aviation Joint Safety Committee has said this needs to be an important topic that is presented to audience at some point during fiscal 25. They lined it up for October, and there's a wonderful presentation media already set.
Bob, does that have anything to do with vertigo?
It has a lot to do with vertigo. Vertigo is a false sense of what a person's attitude, their spatial orientation is based on erroneous inputs that are received by their body as to what the aircraft is doing. People are especially vulnerable to it when they're flying at night or in instrument conditions when they can't see outside the aircraft, when they can't see the actual horizon. They're flying perhaps through clouds or fog or, God forbid, a storm or snow or other precipitation. When you can't see the ground, you're especially vulnerable to what movements the aircraft takes and how they are perceived by your body.
It's a whole different chapter, Bob, but getting into the flicker vertigo and ergonomics. I mean, even the engineering, the layout of a cockpit, when you're on the gauges, you don't want to have to do this and then get back on the gauges.
You know, that's a good point, Ben. And in the military, my background is naval aviation. And out at the carrier, they learned through experience, and I do mean not good experience, they learned through experience not to have a pilot who is approaching the carrier in darkness or in instrument conditions, not to have that pilot reach down behind him to switch a radio frequency from one controller to the next. The Navy and other military services have learned to keep the pilot on a single selected channel, and instead of having the pilot change channels, they have the controllers aboard the ship or on the ground change channels ahead of the pilot so that he can continue watching his instruments. Or she, yes sir, can continue to watch their instruments and not have to look down for buttons and dials on a radio. And it has saved many, many lives. But like so many safety procedures in aviation, they are built upon initially bad experiences. And so we're learning from the mistakes of the past and preventing accidents by improving our procedures and our techniques.
And Bob, this is just an example of how we could dig into each one of these 12 topics.
Yes, sir.
And we're talking about, we could speak for weeks on the information, but we don't have time on this show. But I just wanted to bring that out initially. But there's so much more to learn, and contact us, and I'll kick it back to you, Bob. Go.
We're just touching the tip of the iceberg when we introduce these topics and what they're talking about. What we want the audience to know is a sense of what is coming up in that particular presentation, what they can expect, and how they might be able to organize their time and plan to attend not just one, but many of these meetings throughout the year. Some FAST teams in the local area, they present the complete compendium of these topics of the month and the topics of the quarter for airworthiness. And that is perfectly great. We are very happy with that. Some teams will touch on just one or two that they have some expertise in. It's up to the volunteers as to how they will pursue it. But we have provided a wonderful framework for them to use. And even if you look at the media without seeing the whole presentation, you're really money ahead for having reviewed what is there in the media. For November, now I know October, November, and almost December are in the rearview mirror, but what's really cool is that these topics of the month can be presented in any order. The October topic doesn't have to be presented in October. It's only a suggestion. The November topic doesn't have to be presented in November. It could be presented in October or in January or some other month. They're only asking that it be presented sometime during that period between October 1st and September 30th of the next year. And it's up to the volunteers as to when they do it. If you want to be on pace, this is a wonderful schedule to follow. For November, the General Aviation Joint Safety Committee has outlined another important topic that is sometimes a root cause or a contributing factor in incidents and accidents, and that is over-reliance on automation. I have been around aviation not as long as the great Ben Coleman or the great Obie Young or some of the wonderful veteran pilots that I work with every day. But I've been around long enough to see some of the amazing and amazingly fast changes that are taking place within the industry. One of the most important marriages in aviation is not the marriage of a husband and wife, but the marriage of an airframe with aviation electronics, or avionics as we call it. The marriage of aircraft and electronics is an amazing marriage, and they have done more together than they have separately. Aviation and electronics together are a meteoric rise, and tremendously fast changes are taking place. As a result of that, what we see now is a tremendous automation of many of the processes and decisions that pilots used to make in the cockpit by themselves, alone in flight, or with the help of a co-pilot or a flight engineer or a navigator. I don't know if you guys, many of the young people in the audience might not even realize that the FAA used to have a position for navigators. Well, now we have GPS that automates a lot of the navigational functions that obviates or eliminates the need for navigators. They're dinosaurs now, navigators, and I was a navigator in the Navy. I'm a dinosaur in the Navy for sure. I may be a dinosaur in a few other places too. But it's an honor to bring you this topic called flight data monitoring, a wonderful and powerful source of incidents and mishaps.
Bob, one thing on the previous subject of cockpit
vestibular illusions?
No, cockpit automation.
Yes, sir.
There's a term called, when you fly in a retractable gear aircraft, takeoff, positive rate, gear up, and locked. Okay, got a good light. In this situation, there's a thing in the cockpit called head down and locked. And when you get fixed on what's going on right in front of you, you're not looking about what's going on outside of the airplane. And anybody heard the term see and avoid? See and avoid and the automation, it's a conflict. So you got to be very judicious with your time and what you do. And speaking of time and being judicious, I have tripped you up, and I'm going to make you late if we don't speed up.
Very good, very good. I am very honored to present to you the January topic of the month. What happened to December? We missed December. Okay, there it is, flight data monitoring. Before I jump off of this slide, take a look at the box on the right and look down in the lower right corner of that box. You'll see a USB input port for uploading a flash drive. That's where we've come in the last just few years, where people are able to record the parameters of their aircraft. Okay, next slide, please. For January, we have safety culture as the topic of the month. And I'll talk a little bit more about safety culture in the next segment. Safety culture is an important mental philosophy to adopt, and this presentation helps introduce audiences large and small to the concept of a positive safety culture.
Got it.
For February, we have another very important topic that sometimes trips up pilots who land out in the outback, and that is GA survival. Please come to Sun and Fun. You just might see an FAA subject matter expert talking about GA survival. His name is Mike Millard, and he brings a lot of toys with him to the stage. Please come to the FAA. It's called the Orlando Field Office. Many people know it as the FAA Safety Center. Please come there during Sun and Fun to see Mike Millard's presentation on GA survival. For March, we have the risk-based flight review and the WINGS program. For many in this audience, you need no introduction to the WINGS program, but for others in the audience who are new to the WINGS program, it'll be an introduction. What we're talking about is a risk management-based approach to conducting a very important periodic function known as a flight review. For April, we have a subject near and dear to my heart, the stabilized approach. This is energy management in actual practice. It is so important to stabilize the approach before you complete the approach. If you want to land safely, start the approach safely. Okay, for May, we have approval for return to service. And Benji, you probably forget more about this topic than I'll ever know as a pilot. You're a pilot and a mechanic, and a very seasoned one. This is a very good introduction for pilots about the concept of approval for return to service. Do not take an aircraft out of maintenance unless it has been signed off and approved for return to service. For June, another really cool topic called Mosaic, regulatory roadblock reduction. This is the government listening to the people. We don't just have elections, we have the democratic process. The regulatory roadblock reduction has led to a new neat program called Mosaic, which stands for Modernized Operational Safety and Airworthiness for certification. It basically is Light Sport 2.0, a huge change to the Light Sport aircraft program. For July, we have GA overwater operations. This is where you're operating your probably single-engine aircraft on perhaps a flight over water, out to the Bahamas. You're beyond gliding distance from shore. You got to think about how you prep for survival if, God forbid, your aircraft should turn into a boat on the way to the Bahamas. The topic for August is pre- and in-flight weather sources. This is another source of cockpit automation and perhaps can lead to over-informed pilots as opposed to under-informed. But it is possible to have so much weather data on your screen that you can't interpret it all. In-flight weather sources are a wonderful topic for safety and accident prevention. Safety wire, another airworthiness topic for pilots in September. This will round out the fiscal 25 General Aviation Joint Safety Committee topics of the month. There's a picture in the slide of an item that broke, but it appears to have been perhaps properly safety wired, and maybe it didn't come apart, but it's a good example of what safety wiring is talking all about.
Let's hold that picture up there on program.
Sure.
Do you know that that was a pitch control cable, turnbuckle? That was actually, and one of those happened here in Orlando, and that might be the actual turnbuckle that failed. But if it had not been for the safety wire, they would have lost pitch control, and they would have had to fly with the trim. And hopefully we all train to fly and land just using the trim. Has that skill gone away?
No, it hasn't, and that is Private Pilot 101.
Okay.
And it usually post-solo. I wouldn't have a student do it in a pre-solo mode. But there are a number of things to be mindful of when you take an aircraft up into the wild blue. We are trying to help prevent accidents. The FAST team, I say the FAST team is a lot like a dentist. Mm-hmm. The dentist, is always trying to help you prevent cavities. He's telling you things that you can do: brush your teeth, floss, rinse out, fluoride treatments. All those things are designed to help prevent cavities. And if you're successful, the dentist is out of a job. He tells you that knowing that he'll always have a job. The FAST team is like the dentist. We're trying to help prevent accidents, not cavities. We're helping to prevent accidents, and we're trying to provide all kinds of tools, techniques, and knowledge to help prevent accidents, knowing, unfortunately, that there always will be accidents. And these themes from the General Aviation Joint Safety Committee seem to be recurring themes in the statistical database. The FAA is a data-driven organization, and the data indicate that these are areas that need to be concentrated on throughout the year. And you'll see some of these themes come up again next year and the year after that. As long as they remain long poles in the tent of accident causes and supporting causes, they will show up on the GAJSC's radar screen.
And I did misspeak. I misspoke. I have to admit, I misspoke earlier. I call it the steering committee. There used to be a lot of steering committees, but this is the safety committee, General Aviation Joint Safety.
You're right, Ben. They started out as the Joint Steering Committee, and they changed their name a couple years ago to the Joint Safety Committee. Same mission, slightly different name, and they've modernized their workforce, and they're always looking for people to contribute inputs to what is going on. They'll analyze data, they'll talk to industry experts, they have FAA personnel on the committee. EAA, for example, is a co-chair of the Joint Safety Committee, and I have some comments later to relay to the audience from the EAA. Some good stuff.
Well, and Bob, there's one thing we didn't share with the group that's watching this is your background in the Navy. And a Navy commander is pretty big, wears a pretty big hat. And the first time that I saw you in your Class A's, it fits your personality absolutely to a T. You are Commander Jex.
I probably told the audience, I said, this audience, you know, to the people here, I think it was the day of my wedding, and I said, I'm not a Superman, but this uniform makes you sure feel like one. And I'm no expert, but I did stay in at a certain well-named hotel last night.
Excellent, excellent. That Holiday Inn is very, very popular. And also, we did not mention that we have the honor of having Captain Rasky, Bob Rasky, the Captain Bob Rasky.
And what an amazing guy he is. You know, there's a lot of royalty. I consider them aviation safety royalty that works with the FAST team, and all as a volunteer. We've got Bob Rasky. He is actually the reigning National Flight Instructor of the Year. Mm-hmm. And what an amazing individual he is. And I can't say enough good things about him. And well, he's not the only one.
We could go on, but we only have an hour, and we could fill up a week. But Bob is he's actually very humble, very knowledgeable. If you ever get a chance to listen to Bob speak, you won't miss it. You won't miss it again and again and again. But he's cool, but he's also, like I said, he's the national CFI.
National.
And the awards program is so important and critical to our industry survival that we really need to prop up and get behind you on our General Aviation Awards program. And we'll talk about that in the second segment a lot more, because I want to dig into what you have to offer on that. Because if you know someone that has gone above and beyond, that is notable, that what their efforts are is making a difference, nominate them. Throw the name in the hat, and it's worth a little bit of time and effort to recognize them. And we'll get in again in the second segment about what that recognition can do to improve their career as well as your career. Because you learn something every time that you put somebody up, and you might want to follow in their footsteps. So we are going to kind of wind this one up, Bob, and get ready for the second segment, which is going to be a little bit more but different. And again, that all-important quote in the end for your AMT and Wings credit code. We'll see you next interview, and this has Ben Coleman, your host, Florida Aviation Network, Plane Time 24. See you in a bit.
from a very young age, I just saw the magic that was the airlines.
I wanted the adventure. I wanted the opportunity to travel.
Piedmont just like popped up, and I thought that was fate.
All of the skills, everything that you're going to need to succeed, you can get at Piedmont.
I never envisioned that I would have a career in aviation. And now that I've been here, I can't imagine working any other place.
From a very young age, I just saw the magic that was the airlines.
I wanted the adventure. I wanted the opportunity to travel.
Piedmont just like popped up, and I thought that was fate.
All of the skills, everything that you're going to need to succeed, you can get at Piedmont. I never envisioned that I would have a career in aviation. And now that I've been here, I can't imagine working any other place.
From a very young age, I just saw the magic that was the airlines.
I wanted the adventure. I wanted the opportunity to travel.
Piedmont just like popped up, and I thought that was fate.
All of the skills, everything that you're going to need to succeed, you can get at Piedmont. I never envisioned that I would have a career in aviation. And now that I've been here, I can't imagine working any other place.
Hello and welcome back to Plane Time 24. I'm Ben Coleman, your host, and this is segment 2 here on the 21st of December from Oviedo. And this is the Gizmo Production USA set that we have here, the Florida Aviation Network. And we're going to continue on with Bob Jex. And Bob has more exciting information to share with us about what's available to you out there in the field, that being a retired FAA Fast Team manager to now a Fast Team rep. And he's available anytime, all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Bob will answer his phone, maybe. So leave a message at least. If he's not able to answer, he will get back to you. Bob, I didn't just expose you, did I?
I don't know. I'm still fully clothed, Ben, so I think we're still okay. The audience isn't ready for anything else.
Welcome back to number 2.
Thank you,
Segment
Ben.
2. All right, let's hit it.
All right. It's an honor to be on set, as always. I'm very, very pleased and excited to continue this wonderful presentation of the periodic topics of the General Aviation Joint Safety Committee. I wanted to talk in this second segment about the airworthiness topics of the quarter. In the first segment, we introduced
That's dear
12.
to my heart. That's
Yeah,
dear
I
to
know,
my heart.
I know. I've got your seatbelt. I'm going to tighten it down a little bit more.
Hold me
Watch
back.
for the oxygen to drop in from the overhead.
Hold me back.
The General Aviation Joint Safety Committee outlines a number of accident prevention topics for a year's worth of activity. In the federal government, the fiscal year runs from October 1st through September 30th of the next year. So we're just about complete with the first quarter. We divide the fiscal year into quarters. October through December is the first quarter. These are the suggested topics from an airworthiness point of view that help, we think, will help prevent accidents from happening. How do you measure an accident that never happens? Don't know. One thing you can watch is a dropping trend in statistics, and I have some really good news on that later in the program. So we think that this program is effective. It certainly is popular, and the volunteers who support the FAA and the FAST team can easily get involved in these projects, and we have some pointers for them later on as to how they can better perform this mission. It's wonderful to do that. I'm so honored and so pleased to be back here with you on set today.
Good.
All right. Well, as we mentioned in the first segment, topics of the month, that has an operational slant to it. We now shift our focus to the airworthiness topics of the quarter. They are typically featured in approved media that comes out from the FAA. They're made by National Fast Team. I like to call them Big Fast Team. They come out with media that they develop throughout the year. We sometimes wonder what they're doing, but now we know because they put out a pretty good product. They are suggested topics for the volunteers to come into something of meaningful value to their audiences. If you're a planner and you're wondering, what do I present this month? You have a wonderful choice from these topics of the month and the topics of the quarter. I want to get right into it. We're just about ready to put a bow on the first quarter, because December is almost over and we're wrapping up the first quarter of fiscal 25. However, a really relevant topic leads us off for the airworthiness topics of the quarter, and that is Advanced Air Mobility, or AAM. This is an offshoot of the drone industry and has led to the development, the creation of an entirely new category of aircraft, somewhere between airplanes, somewhere between helicopters, somewhere between powered lift. You now find the brand new aircraft category of Advanced Air Mobility, or AAM. What we need is mechanics and technicians who understand these aircraft and who know how to work on them. An amazingly vibrant industry just got a whole lot more vibrant with the advent of the Advanced Air Mobility class. I sometimes wonder if this is what people are seeing up in New Jersey and New York and Pennsylvania with all these drone sightings you've been hearing about recently. I wonder if there's AAM aircraft undergoing flight testing. It may very well be, I don't know. But Advanced Air Mobility is a new way of flying. Imagine the George Jetson scooter, whatever that jetmobile that he had. that day, you young people, you're going to see it in your lifetime. I'm very excited to see this happening. The city of Orlando is already starting to develop and deploy the infrastructure that will support advanced air mobility aircraft, to the point where they might even have the TSA checkpoints at the remote locations where the AAMs will be flying from, perhaps out at Lake Nona in Orlando. And you'll fly in on an advanced air mobility aircraft to the Orlando airport. You'll get off and you won't even have to go through TSA screening because you've already been through it. You'll just go right out to your gate. I mean, I'm very excited by some of the promises of the advanced air mobility industry. And we're going to need people to work on these aircraft. Obviously, we're going to need people to fly them, but we're going to need people to work on them to keep them flying. It's very exciting what's happening in advanced air mobility.
And Bob, folks sometimes don't realize that even all of the Reaper and our drones, a lot of maintenance goes on, and there are airworthiness requirements and standards. They have to have an annual inspection, just
Absolutely.
like any other aircraft.
Absolutely.
May not be a pilot on board, but they still have maintenance requirements. And it's sometimes a little easier, sometimes a little harder. You don't have anybody to give you actual physical feedback from what's it doing. So you got to look at what's it doing by either the computer printout or physical observations of, looks like that aircraft's kind of rolling to the left a little bit. So we need to get into it. And it's the maintenance industry is just, it's ripe right now for those who have an interest and good eye-hand coordination and mechanical ability. If you don't have it, we'll help you develop it. If you still don't have it, we can't turn you into a mechanic unless you want to be a mechanic or a technician. But
it's so dynamic. There
Yeah.
are so many changes taking place right now. We've both seen the advent of new systems, the pushing aside the retirement of older systems to make way for the new ones. Now we have many systems that are automated. They operate themselves. When they're malfunctioning or operating in an abnormal condition, they're able to download a code that they can send electronically ahead to the maintenance base that's able to work on them. And by the time an aircraft lands, the crews on the ground know what the part is that the aircraft is going to need. They're already coming out to the aircraft with the replacement parts and the technicians that know how to install them. We need to make that really good development even better in the future.
ACARS has worked out great, and it can only get better at this point. And you know, folks don't always appreciate maintenance until they're in severe need of it. We have a gentleman I'm looking at right now, Diego Alfonso, that had really did not really appreciate maybe the running of an engine until his didn't one day. And now he appreciates it, I think, a lot more. And he's an advocate for dead stick landing. But anyway, I digress a little bit. But and ACARS.
It's a digital reporting system that goes up through satellite communications networks.
Automated?
Oh, thank you. Automated communication and addressing reporting system, something like that.
I was just going to throw out
yeah.
an acronym and force you to look up, because you know we're all about acronyms in aviation and government in general. But we'll throw out some more acronyms that we don't have the embarrassing input from our crew. I want you to look it up. When
One of
ACARS,
the things I like about a safety culture is that there is a wonderful crew that surrounds people within a safety culture. And if an individual doesn't have the answer, many times the group will. And almost always an answer can be researched and referenced in FARs and advisory circulars.
We're full of them.
We're full of it, Ben. That is for sure.
All right, I derailed you. Go ahead.
We have our next quarter coming up. That is the January through March quarter, known as the second quarter of the fiscal year. This quarter will be dedicated to parts approval, the obtaining of FAA parts approval, so that we know that we don't have unapproved parts going into the aircraft. If you've got a broken bolt on your engine, you can't just run down to Home Depot and purchase a replacement bolt. That has to be approved parts that meet certain standards for manufacturing, endurance, and wear. And those parts are identified. They're put through a certain supply system that Home Depot could only dream of, and that they have to be the correct parts that go on to an aircraft. Benji, you probably forget more about this than I'll ever know, but what we're trying to do is reach out to the aviation maintenance community, and we of course invite the pilot community to join in on these presentations as well. They're all put on by the volunteers, and that's our suggested topic of the quarter for January through March.
And Bob, I stand to correct you here. You can go to Home Depot or Lowe's or Ace Hardware to get that bolt. You can do that. It's just not legal. And not only that, it's not smart. And if you don't know what you're doing, please don't. Get a hold of somebody that does know what they're doing. And that's the whole thing of, we have an entire different program set up on suspected unapproved parts, SUPs. And anything is suspected unapproved. This pin is suspected unapproved until I see an approval data or some type of a formal record. Oh, this does meet a standard. And that's the whole thing. The standards, the bolt that you mentioned at Home Depot, it don't meet the standards that we require for aviation use. So it's just all about the standards, and that kind of segues right into your next topic.
Sure. We, not only on the operational side, but on the maintenance side, we're emphasizing the development and the promotion of the safety culture, whether at the individual level or in a group setting. We believe that when you're dealing with a safety culture, 2 + 2 = 5. When you have people that are like-minded and are able to think ahead of problems, especially procedural or technical issues, and they have a safety culture that addresses the problems. Some of them are foreseen, some of them are unforeseen. The safety culture is a wonderful philosophy to help prevent accidents and problems from developing and cascading into failures and, God forbid, into accidents and incidents. So safety culture is a big thing for the General Aviation Joint Safety Committee. I also want to mention a little bit more about safety culture at the very end of our slides. We've got a message from an industry leader that I want to bring to the audience's attention. We'll move on from that, but safety culture is an important topic for accident prevention, and it appears not only on the topics of the month, but it also appears on the airworthiness topics of the quarter for fiscal 25. Very important philosophical concept. In the summer, we're going to shift gears and emphasize the approval for return to service. We also saw this topic on the operational side as well. We want to make sure that it's covered on both the operational and airworthiness sides of the house, a more airworthiness bent to the points for the third quarter of fiscal 25 for the airworthiness people. So that's a wonderful topic. There's that looks like Rosie the Riveter and her sister there in the factory putting aircraft together, maybe in the 40s or the 50s. Kind of a neat old vintage picture.
Approval for return to service is probably a term that has been abused and misused so many times. And it sounds good, it sounds trendy, but who actually returns the aircraft to service?
It's
Bob?
an interesting question, and it really is the pilot in command who takes the aircraft up out of the hangar on that first flight after it comes out with the signature for approval for return to service. That basically opens the door to the very next flight, and the PIC, pilot in command, on that next flight is the person who returns the aircraft to service. It's an important operational responsibility that crosses the lines between operational and maintenance, and that is why we invite the mechanics to attend the operational presentations, and we invite the pilots to attend the airworthiness presentations to have a much better foundational understanding of what the other side of their business is doing. Some people are working both sides of the fence, like you, Benji. You've been working the airworthiness side and the operational side for many years, but many folks, especially those in rapid training situations like some of our pilot schools, they only get the one side or the other. They have to reach out actively and look for the other side, and we're offering that through these National Performance Plan topics of the month and airworthiness topics of the quarter. Please take advantage of these. Most of them are free, by the way. doesn't cost you anything but your time
No
to
charge.
show up. Many of them are done as webinars or remote learning. Many of them are done as seminars, and you can't knock the advantage of people in the company of other people. The things that people ask one another, the conversations, the sidebars, the just hobnobbing with your peers has a wonderful leverage within that positive safety culture. So we encourage either method to do it.
Bob, I noticed you have a prop over there.
I do. Are you ready to see it? I'm going to flash it to you guys, and I'm going to show you a little bit more later. This is the November issue, so it's only a couple of weeks old. The November issue of the EAA magazine called Sport Aviation. If you're a member of EAA, you're probably getting this magazine. There is a wonderful editorial right inside here on page 1. I'll flash it to you now, and we'll talk about it in the next couple of minutes. All right, I'm going to just close it up at that point, and we'll jump back into it in just a moment. That is the President's editorial, and it's a wonderful message supporting everything that we're talking about today.
Excellent. It's a safety record, and we are doing better. We're on track to having a good year.
A very good year, one for the record books.
But I mean, in my time, we've gone from 0 accidents to all sorts of buzzwords about. That is the goal, of course, is not have anybody hurt, spill one drop of blood, or bend one aircraft. Period. Whatever aircraft you're in, helo or unmanned or otherwise. But it's a goal. It's a little bit lofty, but the human element is a very, very weak link in that element. But we're involved, and we got to stay involved.
We aim for the bullseye. Many times we don't hit it, but it is a good thing to aim for it all the time. Within that target, we have obviously the bullseye, but we also have some rings, concentric rings around it, and those are our standards. And the standards that we set for ourselves should be the smallest circle around the bullseye.
And I know some people that I'm going to be turning in for some awards because they have their eye on the target, and they help people stay focused on that target.
We enforce that positive safety culture by recognizing the achievers and the contributors who help make that a reality. It's not just something that exists on the pages of a book. A positive safety culture is an important way to operate as an individual or as a group. One awesome way to award the people who are the movers and shakers in that positive safety culture is to recognize people through an award system. And one of the most important awards programs that the FAA has are these competitive awards known as the General Aviation Safety Awards. Each year, the FAA recognizes industry leaders who are leading in 3 areas of discipline. One is the Flight Instructor of the Year, and we have many Flight Instructors of the Year right within our midst within the Florida Aviation Network. We mentioned Bob Rasky, who is the reigning CFI of the Year. We also have Ron Timmermans in the audience, who is not only a National Flight Instructor of the Year, the very next year he was inducted into the Instructors Hall of Fame. So I'm honored to be within 10 feet of these people. They are amazing, and there are many more who are able to help exemplify that positive safety culture. That's on the operational side. There's an FAA award called Flight Instructor of the Year. We also have an FAA award for the Aviation Technician of the Year, the AMT of the Year. And these are also competitive awards. The third category is for Fast Team Representative of the Year. That is one that occurs within the FAST team. You know, FAST team runs on volunteers, just like Oshkosh does, just like Lakeland at Sun and Fun. The whole thing runs on volunteers. FAST team is no different. Florida Aviation Network is no different. FAST team needs volunteers, and there are some tremendous leaders within each FSDO who are able to bring forward and advance the safety message and the accident prevention message. And we honor them and their contributions to the positive safety culture with a national award called the Fast Team Representative of the Year. There is a perpetual calendar. We are in the midst of that calendar right now for the 2025 award cycle. We've just concluded the acceptance of new award packages, and now the process shifts over to the FSDOs for selections at the FSDO level. Once the FSDOs, my successors at the Orlando FSDO are Randy Burke and Javier Calderon, they will be selecting the three categories, the winners, for Flight Instructor of the Year, Aviation Technician of the Year, and Fast Team Representative of the Year, and moving those nominations up their chain of command for hopefully ultimate selection by the National Committee. The national winners are brought to Oshkosh, to AirVenture, to be treated like royalty and to be nationally recognized by the FAA administrator at a special awards ceremony at Oshkosh. It's pretty cool stuff.
Well, I'll tell you then, Bob, what is the WIFM in all of this? Throw that at you, Bob, John Carter. The WIFM, it's an acronym.
I'm having trouble with the word WIFM.
I got you.
Is that in the pilot controller glossary?
Absolutely
Okay.
not. What's in it for me? I mean, we ask people to come and volunteer, and we really appreciate them volunteering, but what's the WIFM? What's in it for me if I'm a volunteer?
For one thing, just being a volunteer on any of these aviation safety organizations is fulfilling within itself. It looks good to your peers that you are actively supporting the active efforts of aviation safety and accident prevention outreach endeavors. To be a leader in your group and to be nominated for an award such as Flight Instructor of the Year, just to be nominated for CFI of the Year. These are competitive awards. Many apply, but only one wins at each level. Just to be nominated amongst your peers as a leader and one of the outstanding members of that demographic, that community, looks good on your resume. If you're nominated for one of these awards, you could put that on your resume. You can say, if you're looking for an aviation job, hey, I was nominated for Flight Instructor of the Year within the Orlando FSDO, for the 2024-2025 award cycle. Mm-hmm. There are other things that a person can do to enhance their visibility in a competitive awards process or a competitive hiring process, as airline hiring often is. There are things you can do to elevate your standing amongst your peers without pushing down any of your peers. There are things, and if you want to, give me a call and we'll talk about some of that stuff. But the important thing is to help foster what the team is doing. Is the team trying to operate more safely? Yes. Are you leading efforts to help that? If you are, then you're possibly a candidate for one of these competitive awards. Flight Instructor of the Year, Aviation Technician, or Fast Team Representative of the Year.
And I'm telling you, even the interns that we have a number of interns actually shooting all these shots from our cameras are interns. They're learning something and they don't even know it. They may not be here to actually learn something, Riley, Kenda, but they're learning something and they're going to pick it up. And hopefully, if we can hit that spark with a volunteer that has an interest, they come in to want to be a part of the group. And Obi Young, the team leader here, if you will, takes them under his wing. They're set, but now they've got to perform. You can't fire a volunteer, but you can uninvite them. And Obi's wonderful at, he will set the stage. His demands are high, but you will learn something if you hang around Obi Young. Ask Obi too, because he's actually doing the technical directing today. There's just so much in this WIFM, and I'm sorry to throw you under the bus there, Bob, with that term, but we have got to really understand why more people aren't getting involved, because we're talking to a mere sliver of the population. The folks watching this that are really into it is just it's a grain of sand on the big beach of people that are really interested.
It's important to get people who are in a shell, to get them out of their shell and into some of these programs. This is a wonderful way to get a start in an aviation career, and who knows where it would lead. We work with the FAST team volunteers. We work with people who want to present this material. We're very happy to do it. You may see on screen here some tips for the planners and the presenters. I don't need to read all that, but it's important to basically be in communications with your people, your teams, your audiences. And one of my biggest regrets in presenting a FAST team or any safety seminar is an empty seat anywhere in the room. If you see empty seats, you have a challenge. Invite somebody who needs to be in that seat. And you know what? You bring somebody to one of these presentations and they will say, "Thanks for inviting me. I learned more in that presentation than I expected to learn." And I learned a few things that I didn't expect to learn. In the Flight Instructor's Handbook, that's called incidental learning. You go to learn A, B, and C, but along the way you learn D, E, and F. That's called incidental learning, the D, E, and F part. It's a wonderful part of what we do as volunteers and as organizations of teams doing volunteer service, such as the Florida Aviation Network and the FAST teams.
It all adds to the safety culture. And with a strong safety culture, you're going to have a safe operation.
I want to spend another couple of minutes talking about something I've been sort of teasing for the last several minutes.
You got 45 seconds.
I got 45 seconds to show you. This is the editorial page inside on page 1 of a very recent issue of Sport Aviation. Jack Pelton is the president of EAA. He is his organization, EAA, is a co-chair of the GAJSC, which we've been talking about for the last several minutes. He presented some very good news, and it's part of EAA's support for the safety culture that we've been talking about within the context of the GAJSC. For the fiscal year that ended on September 30th, the EAA is very proud to report, and I'm very proud to pass it on, that they have experienced their lowest ever level of fatal accidents in the home-built category, a very high-risk category. They are making strides, and I'm very happy to relay Mr. Pelton's message to this audience.
And all of our chapters out there, EAA chapters, good for you, and thank you for what you're doing, and thank everyone that's contributing to this movement. And another contribution, have you ever wondered about the weather?
Wondered about it.
Dr. George Bartuska is going to be on here on the segment 3, and I purposely try not to learn anything when Dr. Bartuska is talking, and it's still every damn time I wind up learning something. So this time I'm not going to learn something in segment 3. I'm not. Now watch him prove me wrong. Now, and we're also going to have at the end of the presentations that code, that all familiar 4-digit code. And please pay attention to the code and pay attention to yourself. Situational awareness is another key phrase in aviation and for in the aeronautical industry in general. So we'll see you next interview and look for that code. I'm Ben Coleman, your host for Florida Aviation Network. See you.
from a very young age, I just saw the magic that was the airlines.
I wanted the adventure. I wanted the opportunity to travel.
Piedmont just like popped up, and I thought that was fate.
All of the skills, everything that you're going to need to succeed, you can get at Piedmont. I never envisioned that I would have a career in aviation. And now that I've been here, I can't imagine working any other place.
from a very young age, I just saw the magic that was the airlines.
I wanted the adventure. I wanted the opportunity to travel.
Piedmont just like popped up, and I thought that was fate.
All of the skills, everything that you're going to need to succeed, you can get at Piedmont. I never envisioned that I would have a career in aviation. And now that I've been here, I can't imagine working any other place.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the third segment of Plane Time 24. I'm Ron Timmermans, one of the many hosts for the Florida Aviation Network, who is bringing you this broadcast today. We're broadcasting live and in the clear from our studios in Oviedo, Florida. Thank you for joining us. So if you've already been with us this morning, you've heard two great segments with my colleague Ben Coleman hosting the famous Bob Jex telling us about JSC safety topics that we'll be hearing about at wing seminars as we go through this fiscal year. Now, we're changing our focus now to a specific topic. I have with me a colleague and longtime friend, Dr. George Bartuska. George is known as the weather guy, and you can imagine then that the topics he's going to cover now are about weather. He's told me it's going to be a couple of different topics. Thunderstorms, something that all pilots should be aware of and perhaps be very respectful of. Radar, how to find those thunderstorms and more appropriately how to stay away from them. And then a subset of thunderstorms known as microbursts, which certainly should bring fear to the hearts of pilots. These are the most deadly parts of the thunderstorm. So George, I know you come well prepared with probably way more information than you can possibly deliver in the 25-minute segment we have here. So rather than take more of your time, why don't you just take it away?
Okay, Ron, thank you. Now, to review, several sessions ago we did a whole session on thunderstorms, and then I did a whole session on weather radar and ran out of time, so now we're going to cover those things that we didn't have time to cover. We're going to eventually go over microbursts, gust fronts, and derechos. Meteorology is a very complex subject. What I'm about to present to you would take at least a semester. I've only got 25 or 30 minutes. Here we go. Let's review. First off, note to the audience, thunderstorms are very dangerous to people and aircraft. The required simultaneous atmospheric preconditions are especially common in the spring and summer in North America. Where are thunderstorms? Well, with the exception maybe of the West Coast, thunderstorms can happen anywhere with frontal weather, but we're here in Florida. We know that we get summer thunderstorms almost every afternoon, air mass thunderstorms, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Now let's review quickly. What do we have to get a thunderstorm? We have to have moisture, we have to have water content, which is the dynamite of weather, preferably in the lower middle levels of the atmosphere. We have to have an unstable atmosphere, which means it's cooler as we go up, so things that are warm can rise. And we have to have some lift or trigger to start that process. That can be a frontal boundary, it can be a mountain, or it can be the convergence that takes place of the two coasts of the state of Florida. Like I said before, predominantly we have air mass thunderstorms in Florida in the summer. This time of the year, now in the winter, we get frontal boundaries that come down from up north. Throughout the rest of the country, we get frontal, we can have squall lines and we have frontal boundary storms. Now, the three main stages of a thunderstorm, to the glider pilots, they know the cumulus stage because that's what they're looking for, to see air rising if it's going to be a good day to go soaring. Then we turn into the mature stage, which is where we get the rain and hail and potential tornadoes. And then the dissipating stage, which is where a lot of the microburst or downburst phenomena take place that I'm going to be talking about. Here specifically is an illustration of what happens here in Florida. Because we have two coasts, we get a sea breeze developed on one coast and a sea breeze developed on the other. They converge in the middle of the state of Florida, and right down the middle, we get this converging of air from the sea breezes. And if there were no other weather phenomena in Florida, we'd have thunderstorms right down the middle of the state every day in the afternoon. But we do have other weather systems from highs and lows, so things can move around. Here's a frontal boundary, a cold front boundary that's a major source of thunderstorms throughout the rest of the country. Notice that 30 miles I put down there. That's the average width of the frontal boundary. A front is not just a straight line, it's a slanted period of where the severe weather can take place. In the case of the warm front, look at the boundary at 370 miles on an average. So there's much more to be worried about in addition to cold fronts with warm fronts, and wind shear problems do occur in warm fronts. Now, a gust front. A gust front is what you experience when a storm is coming towards you and you feel that blowing air might last a couple minutes when the rain-cooled air meets the thunderstorm inflow. And that gust front can cause what is called a shelf cloud. A lot of textbooks mistakenly call this a squall line. A squall line is actually a line of thunderstorms. This is a shelf cloud, or sometimes called a roll cloud. The other thing we're going to talk about today is derecho. Derechos aren't talked about much in most aviation books, but a derecho is a severe form, say, of a gust front. A gust front may last 10 to 15 minutes. A derecho can last a couple hours and go across many states. A derecho is a line of intense, long-lived, and widespread thunderstorms that move quickly across a long distance. The most severe derecho we've ever had in the United States occurred in August 10, 2020. It cost over $7.5 billion in damage. A lot of that was crop damage. The winds are so intense, they blow down and destroy corn and soybeans, and you can see what it did to these empty grain bins. One of the most dramatic derechos ever caught on film was at the Indianapolis State Fair in 2011, and this wind system, we have a video that was caught, and I do need to mention that when this stage came down, it did kill several people and it did injure many people, but it is an excellent illustration of what a derecho really happens. Here you can see that wind. Imagine you're in an aircraft and you're coming towards that wind. There's got to be a lot of wind in there to bring that thing down. That is a classic case of a derecho. Great. So next I want to talk about the energy for all of our weather is the sun, of course. The center of the earth is hot, but that really doesn't affect our weather. Our weather comes from the sun, and it's not the sun heating the atmosphere. Energy from the sun is at the wrong wavelength. It heats the earth, and the earth re-radiates that energy up to heat the atmosphere. The other thing is moisture. If there's no moisture in the air, there will be no tornadoes, no anything. We've got to have moisture in the atmosphere. When we talk about this in meteorology, we're talking about an imaginary blob of air we call a partial. And I'm going quick through this because I've already done this previously, but I want to get to the main part. This is a typical beach scene here in Florida. Let's pretend that car on the left that has the carrier on the top is our car. If we were out swimming for an hour and came back to the car and opened that door, there'd be a blob of hot air. And that hot air would start to rise just like a hot air balloon. and it would go up, say, to 5,000 feet, and at that point it would have equalized with the air around it, and nothing would happen. But now let's say we dried off and threw all our wet towels in the car and went down the beach to get a hot dog and a soda. An hour later when we came back, if we opened that door, a blob of air would come up again, only this time it's fully saturated from the towels. And this time when it gets up to around 5,000 feet or so, it would reach the dew point, it would cool down the dew point, and the latent heat would start to come out, and it would get hotter and it would start rising faster. Thus is the creation of an updraft. Updrafts can get going 60 to 100 miles an hour. And as you can see illustrated here, the lifted condensation level, or the LCL, is when that lifting first hits the dew point, and then if there isn't an inversion in place, it'll hit the level of free convection and start going towards the top. Here's an illustration that maybe better illustrates for you, because we have what's called the dry and moist adiabatic lapse rate that I talked about last time. And the other thing that happens is thunderstorms can occur singularly, or they can occur in groups or multi-storms, and that is the cause of a squall line. But if you follow that middle arrow, you can see the 3 different stages of the thunderstorm happening, and that's important when we talk about downdrafts and microbursts. Now, radar originally stood for radio detecting and ranging. Today, we should say it's microwave detection and ranging because of the signals that we use. A radar basically sends out a pulse that's reflected by something moist with water, comes back and is detected. Simply stated, weather radar transmits a radio signal or pulse that reflects off an object, typically rain or hail, that creates an electronically displayed echo or blip. Note, weather radar only detects precipitation, not turbulence, unless you have Doppler radar on board or on the ground that can detect the water that's being moved by the turbulent air.
Yet we know, George, that if we're in an airplane that has onboard radar and we see thunderstorms out ahead, we are looking at the return of moisture precipitation.
Right.
Often associated with that is turbulence.
Turbulence, right, exactly.
So you'd know that's another reason not to go towards a thunderstorm.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Almost for certain be present.
Absolutely, good. And last time I went into depth on these 4 topics here. Today we're only concerned with the terminal Doppler radar, which was developed especially or specifically to detect downbursts and microbursts, detects low-level wind shear and gust fronts. And that system includes the terminal Doppler weather radar, installed low-level shear detectors from 6 to 36 at an airport, and the ASR-11 or ASR-9 radars that the air traffic controllers use that are all incorporated into a software package. Now let's talk quickly about radar again. Radar is a beam of electromagnetic waves. It has an amplitude and a frequency. In aviation and meteorology, we focus more on the wavelength. The electronic people focus more on the frequency. Here's an example of an electromagnetic wave. In standard radar, we're only using the horizontal wave. In Doppler radar, we're using both, and in dual pole, we're using both, and I'll talk about that in a minute. In the electromagnetic spectrum, there's only a part that's the microwave. Different radars use different microwave frequencies. At the top is our basic signal. I show this because we all know what AM and FM radio are. AM is an amplitude modulated signal, FM is frequency modulated signal. But in the case of radar, we're dealing with energy that's moving at the speed of light, or 186,000 miles per second. If we could get an electromagnetic signal to go around the Earth, it could go around the Earth 7.5 times in a second. Give you an idea how fast it's moving. Now, the actual radar pulse, on the average, is only 1 microsecond or 1/1,000,000th of a second. The importance about that is it spends the next 999 microseconds listening for the return or the echo of that signal. What this means in the end is that the radar is in the listening mode 99.9% of the time, and thus it's not going to hurt you under most conditions. Now, weather radar has become the primary means of detecting, describing, tracking, and nowcasting or forecasting precipitation-laden and, to a more limited extent, extent clear air weather over the United States in the case of Doppler. Now, what is this Doppler radar about? If we look at this image, you see there are two sine waves in the background that are gray. That's the signal that gets transmitted out. Then there's a red sine wave on the top one and a green sine wave on the bottom. The gray line is the transmitted signal. The return energy changes the wavelength characteristic when it hits a target moving away. Red ones are moving away, the green ones are coming towards us. The way I teach to remember that is we like money. We want green money coming our way, and we want anything in the red to go away. Okay? Here's a velocity profile or Doppler weather display. The shift in the phase, okay, returns in the Doppler radar. I'm running out of time. The radar computer measures that Doppler change, and now we're going to see a little bit about talking about a microburst.
Rod Borden saw firsthand the destructive power of thunderstorm winds on Memorial Day weekend more than 30 years ago.
Really awe-inspiring.
A combined F4 tornado and a downburst destroyed 88,000 trees in a Pennsylvania state forest.
I had never seen anything like that in my life, and to see an entire hillside just devastated.
Wind shear around the country caused a series of deadly airplane crashes in the 1970s and 80s. Those tragedies led to the development of airborne detection of microbursts and runway warning systems. As the head of the Columbus Regional Airport Authority, Borden holds that memory close.
The leap forward in technology with the Doppler weather radar really allowed the air traffic controllers to literally see exactly where the wind shear and the downbursts are occurring.
If two or more sensors show wind blowing in different directions, pilots are warned to alter their course.
So as you can see from the aircraft on final approach here, they are very close to the ground, and if they land during a thunderstorm, they will literally cause the airplane to lose its lift and drop into the ground.
Take a look at this dramatic time-lapse video showing the development of a microburst captured on our Skycam. A solitary storm formed over downtown Columbus on a hot, muggy July evening and then collapsed in a stunning ball of rain and powerful straight-line winds. It spread out over several miles and knocked down numerous trees in its path.
So that was a beautiful illustration of what we're talking about now. Trained airline pilots who fly into major airports, they have detection equipment on board the aircraft, they have training, and they have automation on board called a Togo switch that take off and go around that'll help them do the things they automatically need to do to avoid a microburst. But the general aviation pilot who's flying into non-huge airports that doesn't have radar may not have that. They need to use their vision to look for signs of what might be a downburst in process. I'm going to skip through this. We're going to go back real quick to 1940. A DC-3 crash killing a senator. At the time, it was considered the worst aircraft accident in industry, but more things happened. We lost a lot of aircraft during World War II for weather, for reasons nobody knew. So after the war, we instigated Project Thunderstorm, where we were in Florida for a year and then Ohio for a year. We flew P-61 Black Widows into thunderstorms at 5, 10, 15, and 25,000 feet. And from that came a report called the Thunderstorm Project, which was the first time we documented the stages of a thunderstorm that we have today. This is a copy of the report, and the thing that is in here that nobody knew at the time that we now can go back and look at, it says a portion of the microbarograph record for July 14th, 1947 from station so-and-so showed a pressure nose. Nobody had any idea what that pressure nose was right there. Whoops. That peak, that came from this instrument right here. This is a microbarograph. Okay, there we go. This is a microbarograph. At one time, this was the standard in the world. Okay, back. Okay, then comes in the picture Ted Fujita, who came from here from Japanese, who is a famous meteorologist. He passed away in the 90s, but he is known as Mr. Tornado until he discovered the microburst. This was his documentation in 1974 of the super outbreak of tornadoes, over 170 tornadoes. While he was doing this research, this is the typical sign that a tornado has gone through, but he saw this starburst patterns, and also other telltale signs of something that was not a tornado. This is a slanted roof shed where you can see the wind obviously came straight down and off to the side. But what he brought to the table that nobody else did, he was in Japan during World War II as an engineering student. He was in Kokura. Most people don't know that we did bomb Hiroshima and then we bombed Nagasaki, but originally Kokura was the second target. Fortunately, it was clouded over, so Mr. Fujita wasn't affected. But after the war, he was involved in going in and analyzing the damage from the bombs, and it was a starburst pattern, and that's what allowed him to do the further research. And I don't want to neglect the fact that supercell thunderstorms have front downdrafts and rear downdrafts. That's another phenomena that could affect us in flight. But this downburst that creates a microburst is a stream of air coming straight down or down at an angle, and it can create a donut-like vortex roll. And the wind in that vortex can be moving at 170 miles an hour. This is one of Mr. Fujita's drawings. Here's still photography of what we saw in the movie. So if you don't have sophisticated wind shear equipment on your aircraft or your airport, these are the kind of things you should be looking for on approach or on takeoff. The picture on the left is the illustration that's in all aviation weather books about what a microburst is. We need to add to that there could be multiple microbursts. There could be 3 of them straight down the runway, or there could be 3 of them across the runway moving. So where it is right now may be even worse when you get farther on down the runway. On the right, you see the swirl, the curl coming up from a wet microburst. We have dry microbursts that take place when there is no falling precipitation, or there's only virga, which is rain that comes down and evaporates before it gets to the ground, and it looks like a curtain hanging in the air. So during takeoff and climb out or landing approach glide path, aircraft can encounter their greatest vulnerability to potential disaster. Sudden changes in wind speed and or wind direction, called wind shear, have caused many fatal accidents in the past. Wind shear is a change in wind speed or wind direction. So what's our critical part of wind shear? It can cause the wind direction changes of 180 degrees, can cause wind speed changes in excess of 50 knots. Wind shear can be detected by early identification, getting a warning from air traffic control that the airport has detected the potential for a wind shear. You need to abort your landing or abort your takeoff. And from prior training. Thus avoid operations if there's a thunderstorm over the airport or in the flight path. Note visual signs, like I said, of virga or precipitation doesn't hit the ground. The pilot process wind shear warnings and advisory. Consider PIREPs indicating speed increases or decreases by other pilots. Process any report of variable winds or wind gusts. Watch visual blowing dust or treetop movement as you're coming into land. Look to see if the trees are blowing or anything is happening. Now, microburst is a horizontal wind that can occur a few hundred feet off the ground, normally found when there is convective activity. It can be hidden in the rain, embedded in heavy rain showers. Can be associated with virga, what we said. A ring of blowing dust may appear like a donut. The average lifespan is 8 minutes. Some books say 5 to 15 minutes. So it doesn't last long, but if you're flying right into it, it doesn't matter. And as I said, multiple microbursts can occur. So flying into a microburst, the aircraft will first encounter a performance increasing headwind. The plane will start to rise, and in the past, pilots pulled back on the throttles, put the nose down, and that was what happened initially, and then they got under the downburst. The downburst started to push the airplane down, and eventually they received the tailwind part of the downburst, the microburst, and by then they had already lost airspeed and altitude. And I'm going to show you here now. Cautionary departures. I'm going to skip through this to get to this right here. This is the training that pilots receive today. If a pilot is flying and suspects a microburst, they need to move if they don't have a toga button. They need to move the throttles to max power, make sure auto throttle is off, assure the speed brakes are stowed because they might have deployed them on the initial increase of airspeed. Disconnect the autopilot, get the angle of attack up to 15 degrees if necessary, and as high as 25 degrees or stick shaker. Forget about everything else. Don't raise the flaps, don't raise the landing gear. The pilot monitoring will be monitoring the ground with the radar altimeter and monitoring the angle of attack. The low-level wind alert system is a group of ground-based weather stations that detect sudden changes in wind velocity and wind direction. This is another summary of that. Now, dual polarization radar or dual pol radar, like I said, uses both those vertical and horizontal wavelengths to better detect microbursts. And now we're going to see Captain Warren Van Berg, who was with United Airlines. This was recorded in 1997. Captain Warren was a U.S. Air Force fighter pilot and 14-time Top Gun, retired from the Air Force, joined the reserves, flew another 27 years in fighters. But during this time, he was an American airline captain for 32 years and then built a private corporate jet business and retired again. Let's listen to Captain Vanderberg talk about escaping from microbursts.
Do not try to watch the wind field vector. Don't try to watch control column position. Don't try to watch EPIR. I will tell you right now, if you were watching EPIR, you would see that the pilot's got full power on these engines. You will also see that subsequently the auto throttles will retard the power, in this case due to a high speed cue. Don't let that happen. Up and off until you're done with them. What I want you to watch on this run is the body angles of the airplane and these two things, AOA and airspeed. I hope at this point you will agree with me. Airspeed is energy. And AOA is lift. And we're going to watch energy and lift play out in this scenario. On the energy indicator, we have the VREF for the airplane right here, and then 10 knot increments. Right now he's about plus 15. On the lift indicator over here, we have an analog angle of attack indication, and that bar right there is stick shaker alpha, what we know as CL max, okay? And then 24 under the 25, that would be stall alpha or flow separation. By the way, is this interesting to you? The flight data recorder has an analog angle of attack indicator. And further, the NTSB says that one of the channels on our airplanes must be angle of attack indication. Because after all, when we go to investigate an accident, how can we possibly tell what happened if we can't see angle of attack? Think about that. Isn't that interesting? All corporate jets fly with it. Now all military aircraft fly with it. And we can't see it clearly. We have some tools, but we can't see it clearly. Now let me tell you something. The NTSB is with us. They are recommending they should be in all airplanes. Okay. What we're going to do then is watch energy and lift play out, okay? And at the end of this scenario, I'm going to ask you, did this crew extract anywhere near all of the energy or all of the lift in this scenario? Here we go.
Three-phase one, you copy the cross? Yes, sir, we're on the way back to 351. Thank you.
About feet. 762 in a barrel.
Plus 25. He's doing real good.
Yes, sir. Everybody around the corner when you're number one. Major 156, contact.
You're going to lose it all of a sudden. There it is.
Go on.
Push it up. Push it way up. Way up. Way up. Way up. That's it.
Racket 626, clear for takeoff. Speed rail. Negative 586 into position 017 right. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up.
I'm going to freeze this here at 50 feet. I'm going to ask you two questions. Is there any energy in this airplane? Is there any lift left on this wing? You know, there is no harm, no foul on this crew. There really isn't. I mean, do you see how purely fast this happens to them? You see how quick that happened? If you're trying to fly by some conventional cross-check and a conventional means with no one clearly identifying to you how fast the ground is coming, rest their souls, I'd be there too. But if one pilot were purely focused on extracting all the lift out of this wing and the other were purely focused on how he's doing relative to the ground, our non-engineering study shows that this plane would have never come below 500 feet AGL.
Okay, of course that was Delta Flight 191 in Dallas-Fort Worth in 1985. And just so the audience know, that's from a YouTube clip that's about a half hour long. It's excellent. If you're an active pilot, I highly recommend you go online and watch the whole thing. Because basically his message then in 1997 was, if I'd have been in that L-1011, I would have done all the exact same things, because we didn't have the training and the instrumentation we do today. But he said, given what we have today, that was a fully survivable flight.
And so, George, to make this good knowledge that we just learned about from the airlines available to general aviation pilots, I'm just giving a bit of a summary here. I think we could say that thunderstorms demand our complete respect, yes. And we need to steer around them or away from them. Many of us now have ADS-B and NEXRAD weather available to us in the cockpit, so we can see the radar picture. But that radar picture we're seeing is not a now radar picture like it would be if we had live radar pointing out the front of the airplane. So this is maybe several minutes old. So where the thunderstorms were then is not necessarily where they are now. So again,
good point.
20-mile going around a thunderstorm by 20-mile radius is probably a good idea for most of us to get to know. And then microbursts, just a very deadly phenomenon. And as we found out from that Delta clip, by the time you're in it, there's almost no time to react. The reaction we know should be power up, pitch to a climb attitude, and just make a go-around. Don't try and fight it. And the same thing that would be indicated by wind shear and the like. Well, George, this has been fascinating. A lot of good information that you've shared with us, much of which applies to airlines and also can be applied to us as general aviation pilots. And I'm so grateful that you're here to share this with us, George.
Good.
Look forward to you coming back again.
Okay.
So I am Ron Timmermans, one of the many hosts of the Florida Aviation Network. Thank you so much for joining us today on this Plane Time 24. We've had 3 great segments here, finishing up with George Bartuska, the weather guy. We'll be back again in a month or so, so stay tuned for Florida Aviation Network. And for those of you who are interested in Wings credit, we're about to flash the credit number that you use to apply for Wings credit, so that should be coming up. It's after the credits, right? After I sign off, you'll see it on the credits. So stay tuned for just a few moments longer. Thank you again for joining us, and have a blessed day.
From a very young age, I just saw the magic that was the airlines.
I wanted the adventure. I wanted the opportunity to travel.
PMOT just like popped up and I thought that was fate.
All of the skills, everything that you're going to need to succeed, you can get at PMOT. I never envisioned that I would have a career in aviation. And now that I've been here, I can't imagine working any other place.